Did you know many U.S. Golden Age celebrities were not buried in the U.S., and what was the reason behind it? Let's uncover the reason behind that and how it all happened. 1. Marlene Dietrich. A hushed whisper in the annals of Hollywood history proclaims the remarkable story of Marlene Dietrich, a German-born actress whose voice, style, and political stances fascinated audiences for decades. Born Marie Magdalene Dietrich on December 27, 1901, in Schöneberg, then a district of Berlin, she initially dreamed of becoming a concert violinist. According to biographer Stephen Bach, in Marlene Dietrich, Life and Legend, her early foray into entertainment saw her playing small roles in German silent films during the 1920s, a stepping stone to her breakout part in The Blue Angel, 1930. That role catapulted her into global fame, leading her to sign a contract with Paramount Pictures and move to the United States. Here, she swiftly gained a reputation for her smoky singing voice, gender-bending fashion sense, and fearless approach to stardom. Despite achieving iconic status in Hollywood, Dietrich remained tied to her homeland in complex and sometimes controversial ways. When the Nazi regime rose to power in Germany during the 1930s, she was vehemently opposed to Adolf Hitler and became one of the earliest German celebrities to speak out against the regime. Her open criticism of Nazism earned her both reverence and resentment back home. However, her devotion to U.S. troops during World War II, including frontline performances for the soldiers, later won her a Presidential Medal of Freedom, illustrating her dedication to defeating tyranny at great personal risk. In the post-war years, Dietrich embraced her American citizenship, granted in 1939, yet she never fully severed her German roots. She made occasional visits to Europe, maintaining contact with family and old friends. Her private diaries, letters, and interviews suggest a deep nostalgia for the Berlin of her youth, a city she both criticized and longed for as it underwent dramatic upheavals over the decades. Following her retirement from film in the late 1950s, Dietrich embarked on a second career as a stage performer, often selling out shows across the world. According to newspaper archives, her one-woman performances in the 1960s and 1970s drew enormous crowds in London, Las Vegas, and beyond, sustaining her iconic status well into her later years. However, she spent most of those years living in near seclusion in Paris, communicating selectively with the world via telephone and written correspondence. Dietrich passed away on May 6, 1992, at her apartment on Avenue Montaigne in Paris. Despite spending her final decades in France and holding American citizenship, she had already made her wishes clear about her final resting place. She longed to be buried in Berlin, the city that had nurtured her earliest dreams. Accordingly, her remains were flown to Germany, and her funeral in Berlin attracted thousands of admirers. She was buried at Städtischer Friedhof, 3 in the Friedenau district, not far from the neighborhood of her childhood. Her gravestone remains a quiet testament to her transcontinental life, a star revered in Hollywood but forever anchored to Berlin. 2. Josephine Baker. Across the Atlantic, another trailblazer emerged in the 1920s. Josephine Baker, an American-born performer who transformed Parisian cabaret, and, much later, carried her activism onto an international stage. Born Frida Josephine McDonald on June 3, 1906, in St. Louis, Missouri. Baker grew up in poverty, witnessing racial strife in a segregated America. According to multiple histories and newspaper clippings from the era, she began her performance career in vaudeville shows, eventually catching the eye of producers scouting for fresh talent in Europe. When Baker arrived in Paris in 1925, she immediately became a sensation at the Folies Bergère with her electrifying dance routines. Often performing in daring outfits, she earned both adoration and controversy. French audiences were entranced by her dynamic presence and the Jazz Age's fascination with African American culture. As recounted in Phyllis Rose's work on expatriate artists in Paris, Baker's popularity soared, and she used her newfound fame to challenge stereotypes. She refused to be boxed into reductive roles, choosing instead to define her own identity. A symbolic stance that resonated with those who championed civil rights. Her life in France extended beyond entertainment. During World War II, Josephine Baker became active in the French resistance, smuggling messages in her sheet music and assisting the Allied cause. Official records and declassified documents confirm her espionage work, for which the French government eventually awarded her the Croix de Guerre and the Rosette de la Résistance. After the war, her activism found another outlet. She fought against racism in the United States, notably refusing to perform for segregated audiences. Her unwavering stance on equality led to an invitation from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to speak at the March on Washington in 1963, where she addressed the crowd in her French uniform, reasserting her role as an ambassador of freedom. Later in life, Baker adopted a large, multi-ethnic family, fondly referred to as her Rainbow Tribe, in an effort to showcase a model of global unity and tolerance. She provided them a home in the Château des Mélandes in southwestern France, drawing international attention to her experiment in racial harmony. Although this endeavor eventually faltered financially, it highlighted Baker's relentless aspiration to forge a better world for the next generation. Josephine Baker died on April 12, 1975, in Paris. Her funeral procession was a moment of profound national mourning. Thousands lined the streets to pay respect to a woman who had become an integral part of French cultural identity. Initially interred in Monaco at her request, Baker's remains would later make history once again. In 2021, she was symbolically enshrined in the Pantheon in Paris, France's monument to its national heroes. This made her the first Black woman to be honored in that hallowed place, affirming her extraordinary influence on the nation's cultural, political, and social spheres. 3. William Holden. Stepping into the mid-century spotlight, William Holden emerged as a defining leading man of Hollywood's golden age, embodying both the glamour and grit of post-war American cinema. Born William Franklin Beadle, Jr. on April 17, 1918, in O'Fallon, Illinois, Holden displayed a natural on-screen charisma that propelled him to stardom with roles in classics such as Sunset Boulevard, 1950, and Stalag 17, 1953. According to Hollywood historians and box office records of the 1950s, Holden was among the top earners of his time, reflecting the widespread appeal of his affable yet complex characters. Away from the Klieg lights of Tinseltown, Holden developed a deep love for Africa, a continent he first encountered while filming. Reports in popular magazines of the era detail how he formed close friendships with local communities during these trips. By the 1960s, he had co-founded the Mount Kenya Game Ranch, now known as the Mount Kenya Wildlife Conservancy, and spent an increasing amount of time in Kenya. There, he became an ardent conservationist, supporting efforts to protect endangered species and promote ecological awareness. Historians of the Hollywood diaspora have noted that his philanthropic engagement in Africa set him apart from many of his contemporaries who often shuttled between film projects without forging strong ties to overseas locations. Despite his global pursuits, Holden remained a fixture in American film. Over the course of his career, he won an Academy Award for Best Actor for Stalag 17 and earned further acclaim in Network, 1976. Nevertheless, The demands of stardom and personal struggles, including bouts with alcoholism, sometimes overshadowed his achievements. In a 1978 interview with journalist Peter Bart, Holden lamented the pressure of celebrity culture, though he spoke proudly of his continued involvement with wildlife conservation. Tragically, William Holden died on November 12, 1981, in Santa Monica, California, after an accidental fall. The suddenness of his death shocked Hollywood and global fans alike. According to accounts reported in major newspapers, his body was cremated soon after, fulfilling part of Holden's wish for a simple end to a life lived largely under the public gaze. Yet the story of his remains takes on an international dimension befitting his own life. While much of his ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California, a portion was sent to Kenya. Local newspapers in Nairobi at the time described how Holden's ashes were quietly transported to the African nation he had grown to love. There, they were ceremonially scattered on the grounds of his wildlife conservancy, symbolizing a bond that transcended geographical barriers. To this day, the Mount Kenya Wildlife Conservancy stands as a living tribute to Holden's environmental passion. Visitors can learn about the diverse animal species protected within the sanctuary and see references to Holden's involvement in local museums and community centers. Annual conservation events occasionally highlight his contributions, underscoring how an American movie star became inextricably linked with African ecological advocacy. 4. Isidora Duncan. In the realm of dance and avant-garde artistry, Isidora Duncan's influence stands unparalleled. Often hailed as the mother of modern dance, Angela Isidora Duncan was born on May 26, 1877, in San Francisco, California. By defying the structured rigidity of ballet, she developed a free-flowing, expressive style rooted in natural movement, Greek aesthetics, and emotional resonance. Early 20th century critics and dance theorists alike recognized Duncan as a revolutionary figure who redefined stage performance. She believed dance should mirror the raw impulses of the human spirit, a philosophy she outlined in her 1927 autobiography, My Life. Duncan's restless artistic spirit propelled her across continents. She established dance schools in Berlin, Paris, and Moscow, striving to disseminate her vision of unrestrained performance to younger generations. Along the way, she earned both admirers, such as the poet W.B. Yeats, who praised her spiritual approach to art, and detractors who found her defiance of traditional ballet unsettling. Newspaper archives from the 1910s and 1920s capture the public fascination with her personal life as much as her dancing. Duncan's high-profile relationships, including those with Russian poet Sergei Yesenin and other luminaries, fueled tabloid speculation, while her unwavering belief in personal freedom, a viewpoint that encompassed politics, love, and motherhood, often put her at odds with Victorian-era norms. Tragedy, however, pursued Isidora Duncan relentlessly. In 1913, her two young children drowned in a horrific accident on the Seine in Paris. This event cast a permanent shadow over her life. Despite occasional returns to the United States, Duncan felt a deeper kinship with Europe's artistic enclaves. She found appreciation for her craft in cities that were more receptive to radical innovations in dance, particularly during the tumult of the early 20th century. Her untimely death came on September 14, 1927, in Nice, France. The circumstances of her passing have become almost mythical. Duncan was a passenger in an open-top sports car when her long, flowing scarf entangled in the vehicle's wheel, causing a fatal accident. The bizarre nature of this tragedy, reported extensively in the international press, further cemented her legacy as an icon who embodied both the transcendent power of art and the unpredictability of fate. She was laid to rest at Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris, where countless luminaries of the arts and letters also find their eternal home. Not far from her own grave rest the remains of her children, poignantly reminding admirers of the depth of her personal sorrows. For decades, dancers and curious tourists have made pilgrimages to her simple headstone, leaving behind flowers, ribbons, and personal notes as tokens of gratitude and reverence. Isidora Duncan's approach to dance reverberates in modern choreography. Contemporary dance companies across the globe celebrate her innovations, regularly incorporating the fluid, emotional movements she pioneered. Her emphasis on physical freedom, a stark contrast to corseted ballet traditions, is often seen as a precursor to later developments in postmodern dance. Scholars researching the intersections of body, gender, and self-expression continue to reference Duncan's writings, archival footage, and personal correspondence for insight into how she bridged nature, spirituality, and performance. Fifth, Rudolph Valentino. Beneath the shimmering veneer of the silent film era lies the legend of Rudolph Valentino, the Italian-born actor who defined an ideal of exotic masculinity in 1920s Hollywood. Born Rodolfo Pietro Filiberto Raffaello Guglielmi di Valentina d'Antonguela on May 6, 1895, in Castellaneta, Italy, Valentino ventured to the United States at the age of 18, driven by dreams of a better life. Early archival records indicate he worked odd jobs in New York City, ranging from bussing tables to dancing in nightclubs, before discovering the world of silent cinema, where his dark hair, smoldering gaze, and European charm proved instantly captivating. Valentino's breakout role in The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, 1921, catapulted him to stardom, solidifying his reputation as the Latin lover. The films The Sheik, 1921, and Blood and Sand, 1922, further entrenched his iconic status. Fan clubs sprouted across the United States, and indeed around the globe, as women swooned over his on-screen magnetism, and men sought to emulate his style. Reporters of the era often noted the frenzied atmosphere outside theaters where Valentino's films were shown, a phenomenon rarely witnessed before in the nascent film industry. Yet, behind the glamour, Valentino faced personal and financial struggles. He endured bitter contract disputes with studios that exploited his image, and his two marriages, first to actress Jean Acker and later to designer Natasha Rambova, became fodder for tabloid gossip. Press coverage painted Valentino alternately as a misunderstood romantic and a heartthrob undone by Hollywood's studio system. Despite these challenges, his star never dimmed. Bookstore archives reveal that Valentino even wrote a volume of poetry, reflecting a sensitive interior life behind the cinematic illusions. His life ended abruptly on August 23, 1926, when complications from surgery led to his death at the age of 31. The news sent shockwaves across the globe. More than 100,000 fans reportedly flocked to his New York funeral, an event that erupted into near chaos as grieving admirers vied for a final glimpse of their fallen idol. Eventually, Valentino's remains were transported to Los Angeles, where he was entombed in what was intended to be a temporary crypt at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Despite repeated discussions over the decades about returning him to Italy, his remains have never been moved. Each year, devoted fans continue to hold vigils at his gravesite, and the legend of the Latin lover remains as potent as ever. Interestingly, the question of repatriating Valentino's body to Italy has recurred over time. Cultural institutions and Italian fan groups have occasionally proposed returning the actor to his native soil, a move that would bridge his two worlds. However, complex legalities, family wishes, and the fervent attachment of American fans have kept Valentino in his Los Angeles mausoleum. Some devotees view his tomb as a kind of pilgrimage site, an enduring testament to the ephemeral nature of silent-era stardom and the immortal allure of Hollywood's early idols. Even in the 21st century, Valentino's image persists in film retrospectives, academic seminars, and pop culture tributes. His life story exemplifies the American dream narrative. An immigrant who rose to unprecedented fame but was also ensnared by the machinery that made him a star. Modern documentaries probe the psychological and social aspects of his meteoric rise, while fan events strive to preserve the mystique that made him a cultural phenomenon. Though physically interred in California, Rudolph Valentino remains, in a profound sense, an Italian luminary whose aura transcends borders and resonates with generations born long after the silent screen went dark. Sixth, Tyrone Power. In the golden era of studio film, few names shone as brightly as Tyrone Power, whose dashing looks and versatile talent positioned him among Hollywood's elite. Born Tyrone Edmund Power III on May 5, 1914, in Cincinnati, Ohio, he hailed from a lineage of stage performers. A family biography, The Powers, a theatrical dynasty, highlights how the legacy of the theater coursed through his veins, guiding him toward a life under the spotlight. After a promising start on Broadway, he broke into films in the 1930s, signing with 20th Century Fox and quickly emerging as one of their most bankable stars. Power's filmography spans swashbuckling adventures, The Mark of Zorro, 1940, romantic dramas, Blood and Sand, 1941, and even darker fare like the film noir classic Nightmare Alley, 1947. Box office tallies from the time reveal that Power was among the top movie stars of the 1940s, rivaling the likes of Errol Flynn and Clark Gable in popularity. Critics often commended his ability to transition from light-hearted roles to intense, psychologically complex characters. Outside of acting, he served in the United States Marine Corps during World War II as a pilot, a testament to his willingness to step away from Hollywood glamour in service of his country. Personal accounts of fellow servicemen describe him as humble and dedicated, traits that would follow him into his post-war career. In interviews, Power expressed a deep love of travel and adventure, frequently taking time off from acting to explore remote destinations. By the mid-1950s, however, the physical demands of his lifestyle and heavy filming schedules began to weigh on him. During the production of Solomon and Sheba in Madrid, Spain, Power suffered a fatal heart attack on November 15, 1958, at just 44 years old. His sudden passing sent shockwaves through the film community and led to an outpouring of tributes. Obituaries recounted his wartime heroics, his storied film career, and the sense that he had left the stage far too soon. After his death, a portion of Power's ashes was buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles, a site that enters many famous figures from film history. Yet, in a reflection of his lifelong love for exploration, part of his ashes were scattered over the Pacific Ocean. According to published reports and family testimonies, he had frequently mentioned his fascination with the sea, viewing it as a symbol of freedom and endless possibility. This final gesture served as an apt metaphor for a man whose life was defined by movement, between continents, between cinematic genres, and between personal passions. Over the years, his legacy has been preserved through numerous film retrospectives, biography specials, and scholarly articles. In the 21st century, new waves of cinephiles encounter his work on streaming platforms and marvel at the unforced charisma that marked every performance. Collectors still seek out film posters and memorabilia featuring his image, while historians note how his service in World War II enriched his portrayal of heroes in later roles. 7th, Ule Briner. High cheekbones, a mesmerizing gaze, and a trademark bald head. These elements made Ule Briner a cinematic icon. Emerging from a multicultural background, Briner was born Ule Borisovich Briner on July 11, 1920, in Vladivostok, Russia, to a Swiss-Mongolian father and a Russian mother. Biographical accounts, such as those found in his son's book, Ule, the Man Who Would Be King, emphasize how his early years were defined by travel and cultural fusion, a prelude to the global trajectory his life would eventually take. Briner initially gravitated toward entertainment as a singer and a circus performer in Paris. He later moved to the United States, where he found success on Broadway. His watershed moment arrived with the stage production of The King and I, written by Rodgers and Hammerstein, in which he portrayed the King of Siam. Critics praised his portrayal as both commanding and charismatic. The role earned him a Tony Award and, when adapted to film in 1956, an Academy Award for Best Actor. His electric performance and exotic stage persona made him a worldwide sensation, rewriting the template for Hollywood leading men. Beyond The King and I, Briner starred in numerous high-profile films, such as The Ten Commandments, 1956, and The Magnificent Seven, 1960. His capacity to merge theatrical intensity with on-screen subtlety attracted a global fan base. Industry data from the 1950s and 1960s list Briner among the most popular international stars, and his image, often featuring his striking bald head, adorned countless movie posters and magazine covers. Throughout his career, Briner maintained a fascinating mystique about his origins. He gave conflicting accounts of his ancestry and sometimes romanticized his background in interviews, which only heightened the public's curiosity. Underneath the enigma lay a man who championed artistic innovation and cross-cultural dialogue. Footage from behind the scenes of his film sets shows him conversing in multiple languages, forging friendships that spanned continents. Briner was diagnosed with lung cancer in the early 1980s, a condition that he publicly attributed to years of heavy smoking. Before his death, he famously recorded a public service announcement that aired posthumously, cautioning others against the perils of tobacco use. This act revealed a socially conscious side of a star who understood the powerful influence he held over his fans. He died on October 10, 1985, in New York City, but his final wish was to be buried in a peaceful, private setting in France. Specifically, Briner chose the grounds of the Saint-Michel-de-Bois-Aubry Orthodox Monastery near Louzé, a rural area offering tranquility reminiscent of his beloved European roots. Local news reports at the time noted the quiet, intimate ceremony attended by close friends and family. The monastery's Orthodox ties echoed Briner's own spiritual explorations, as he was said to hold deep respect for Eastern Christian traditions. For decades, admirers of Ule Briner's work have made pilgrimages to this remote resting place. Although not as widely known as the grand cemeteries of Paris, Saint-Michel-de-Bois-Aubry draws film enthusiasts who wish to pay homage to the actor who ruled Broadway and Hollywood with a regal air. They leave flowers, handwritten notes, and occasionally small replicas of his iconic King of Siam costumes. 8th, Ira Aldridge. From the footlights of 19th-century American theater to the grand stages of Europe, Ira Aldridge's journey was as exceptional as it was challenging. Born in New York City on July 24, 1807, Aldridge grew up in a period of intense racial prejudice in the United States. Aspiring to be an actor, he initially faced insurmountable obstacles. White-dominated theaters barred black performers from classical roles. Yet accounts in black newspapers of the time praise Aldridge's unyielding determination. In his late teens, he secured roles at the African Grove Theater, one of the few venues in New York that showcased black performers. Dissatisfied with the limited opportunities in America, Aldridge moved to England in the 1820s. London's theatre scene at the time was thriving, with luminaries like Edmund Kean dominating the Shakespearean stage. Aldridge leveraged this environment to demonstrate his remarkable range, tackling Shakespeare's Othello, Macbeth, and other canonical roles. Press reviews and critiques reveal that, despite initial skepticism, Aldridge gradually won over British audiences with his powerful voice, emotive expressions, and command of the stage. He was eventually billed as the African Roscius, a reference to the famed Roman actor Quintus Roscius Gallus, signifying the high esteem in which he was held by critics and fans. During his extensive tours across Europe, Aldridge's reputation as a Shakespearean actor soared. He traveled through Ireland, Scotland, France, Germany, and further east, attracting large crowds wherever he performed. Contemporary accounts, many, written in German newspapers, often praised his ability to bring fresh interpretations to classical texts, marking him as an innovative force in a tradition-laden art form. Aldridge's success was not merely an artistic triumph. It struck a powerful blow against racial barriers. He championed abolitionist causes, and his success in predominantly white cultural centers presented a potent counter-narrative to the era's prevailing bigotry. However, Aldridge's relationship with the American stage remained strained. Despite receiving accolades abroad, he performed only sporadically in the U.S. In diaries and correspondence that have surfaced in academic archives, Aldridge expressed both sorrow and indignation at the persistent racism at home. Biographers often note that while he loved his homeland, he found in Europe the audiences and opportunities that allowed him to refine and showcase his full artistic potential. Ira Aldridge died on August 7, 1867, in Łódź, Poland, while on tour. The city honored him with a funeral befitting a theatrical star of the highest order. He was buried in the Old Łódź Cemetery, a resting place that underscores the transcontinental nature of his life's journey. Newspapers from that time remark on the outpouring of respect from Polish theater enthusiasts, many of whom recognized the importance of his work in illuminating both the art of Shakespeare and the universal longing for social justice. Although his name may not be as instantly recognizable in mainstream circles today as some of his contemporaries, Aldridge's influence runs deep in theatrical traditions. Modern Shakespeare companies acknowledge him as a pivotal figure who helped pave the way for performers of diverse backgrounds. In 2017, the city of Łódź unveiled a commemorative plaque and statue in his honor, highlighting his continued significance as a symbol of artistic excellence and cross-cultural exchange. His gravesite, adorned with tributes from admirers across the globe, remains a quiet testament to a man who defied the racial hierarchies of his era to become one of the most renowned Shakespearean actors of the 19th century. 9th, Lios Marcos. Switching the focus from stage and screen to the canvas, Lios Marcos was a Hungarian-American artist whose vibrant portraits captured the allure of Hollywood stars and the rugged spirit of the American West. Born on May 18, 1917, in Budapest, Hungary, Marcos developed an early interest in fine art, attending the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Budapest before immigrating to the United States in the aftermath of World War II. According to interviews documented in art magazines of the 1960s and 1970s, His initial years in New York were marked by struggle and adaptation, as he navigated an unfamiliar cultural landscape. Marcos quickly made a name for himself by painting celebrity portraits, establishing connections in Hollywood and New York high society. His ability to capture the essence of his subjects, whether it was their glamour, introspection, or raw energy, earned him numerous commissions. Historians of contemporary portraiture note that Marcos's style combined old-world technique with an American flair for drama, yielding pieces that felt at once timeless and modern. Collectors of Hollywood memorabilia prize his portraits, many of which depict A-list stars in scenes that exude a sense of cinematic grandeur. At the same time, Marcos nurtured a passion for Western-themed art. He traveled extensively across Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico, painting cowboys, ranchers, and Native American figures against sun-drenched landscapes. Articles from Southwest Art magazine highlight how he blended Hungarian expressionism with Americana, forging a unique aesthetic that appealed to collectors seeking an alternative to traditional Western art. His works eventually found their way into major galleries and private collections across the United States. Despite his American success, Marcos remained deeply connected to his European roots. Friends and colleagues observed that he spoke Hungarian at home and found solace in European classical music, often playing it in his studio while he painted. As he grew older, he would frequently visit Italy, the home country of his wife, forging a personal link to the Mediterranean region and its artistic heritage. The couple cherished Italy's vibrant culture, and the closeness of his wife's family provided emotional support and creative inspiration. After a prolific career spanning multiple decades, Marcos died on September 9, 1993. While he had spent much of his life painting the American dream, his final resting place would be in Italy, in the town of Lavariano, his wife's hometown. Local newspapers from that time mentioned a modest funeral ceremony attended by a circle of friends, family, and fellow artists who admired his cross-cultural vision. The burial in Italy symbolized not only his familial bonds but also the lifelong interplay between his European upbringing and American adventures. Today, Lios Marcos's paintings can be found in both private and public collections, including corporate headquarters and art museums in Texas and California. Curators occasionally organize retrospectives that showcase the breadth of his work, from the sumptuous portraits of Hollywood legends to the vivid landscapes of the American West. Such exhibitions highlight the dual influences that shaped Marcos's artistry: the refined techniques honed in Europe and the unbridled energy of American life. 10th Kasem. Rounding out this exploration of Americans laid to rest abroad is Kasem, a man whose voice resonated through radios and televisions across the nation. Born Kemal Amin Kasem on April 27, 1932, in Detroit, Michigan, he was the son of Lebanese immigrants who instilled in him the importance of education and cultural heritage. As a young man, Kasem found his calling in broadcasting, honing his skills at Wayne State University's student radio station. By the 1970s, he had become a household name as the host of American Top 40, a syndicated radio program that counted down the most popular songs in the United States. Nielsen ratings and broadcast records confirm that millions tuned in weekly to hear Kasem's warm, enthusiastic voice and his signature sign-off. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Kasem's reach extended beyond radio. He provided the voice for iconic cartoon characters like Shaggy and Scooby-Doo, endearing him to younger audiences. In interviews with entertainment magazines, Kasem often spoke about his dedication to bridging generational gaps through his work. His affable demeanor and knack for storytelling made him one of the most recognized personalities in American media. Yet, Toward the end of his life, Kasem became embroiled in a series of legal and familial disputes. Court documents and news reports from 2013 and 2014 detail conflicts over his healthcare decisions and the control of his estate, which pitted his children against his second wife. Amid accusations of elder abuse and legal motions to determine his conservatorship, Kasem's final days were shrouded in turmoil that played out publicly, casting a spotlight on issues of family conflict and end-of-life care. He died on June 15, 2014, in Gig Harbor, Washington. But even after his passing, disputes regarding his burial continued. In a move that sparked considerable controversy, Kasem's wife chose to have his remains sent to Oslo, Norway, where he was buried in December 2014, 6 months after his death. News sources like Time and various celebrity-focused outlets reported on the decision, which was criticized by some family members who felt it contradicted Kasem's own wishes. Legal experts and journalists noted that the case highlighted the complexities of cross-border arrangements for an individual whose personal desires were not comprehensively documented or were overshadowed by familial contention. In Oslo, Kasem's grave does not draw the same crowds as the resting places of certain European luminaries, but it still receives visits from fans and the curious who associate his voice with the golden age of American radio. For them, hearing a Kasem countdown clip or watching a classic Scooby-Doo episode can evoke memories of gentler times, when a friendly voice on the airwaves offered a sense of community and continuity. Over the years, some fans have organized small tributes, leaving flowers and notes that reflect their gratitude for his decades of entertainment. In Ule Briner's serene burial in rural France, Ira Aldridge's solemn resting place in Poland, Lios Marcos's journey ending in Italy, and Kasem's controversial interment in Norway, we see further proof that nationality and identity do not end at the water's edge. Each narrative reminds us that human lives are shaped by cross-border experiences, and that legacy, like life, does not adhere to neat geographical boundaries. These final choices, whether intentional or driven by circumstance, speak volumes about the global imprint of American cultural figures and how the world, in turn, shaped them.